Here we go again. Here we go again. Another African-American boy has been murdered in cold blood. A so-called African-American boy has been murdered in cold, just like that, in cold blood. I told you that this is not going to stop. This will not stop. If you saw the other presentation that I did titled God is Killing African Americans, I told you it's not going to stop. This will not stop. Here we have another one. Another one. Classic of how it always happens. Just check this out. Just watch this. Check this out.
Texas family searching for answers right now after a teenager was shot and killed by a police officer.
Our Steve Pickett's on the story live for us, Balk Springs today, with what we're learning. Steve?
Yeah, we now know there is video of this shooting. The officer using a rifle to shoot inside of a car, killing a 15-year-old, one of 5 inside that car. We now know that officer actually fired that weapon while that car was moving away, and that's the concern here. The parents of Jordan Edwards, we spoke with them. They did not talk officially, but they held a press conference today about all of this, calling for the arrest of this now unidentified Balk Springs officer involved in this, a 6-year veteran here. We know he used a rifle to fire at this car. This was at a party on Saturday night where police were called in, one shot killing their son. The sheriff's department now oversees this investigation, but the chief of police who spoke here in the past 30 minutes says the officer's use of force is under review.
It did not meet our core values. We have a certain set of core values, and it did not meet our values.
We are declaring war on bad policing. This has happened far too often. We are tired of making the same rhetorical demands, of having the same hashtags. Our community is fed up.
The head coach of Mesquite High School, I spoke with him about Jordan Edwards, also fellow students about this kid, a 3.5 student with a perfect smile. They said he didn't meet anyone who wasn't his friend, and this simply doesn't make any sense. It's now in the hands of the sheriff's department to investigate the actions of this officer who's now on leave. Reporting live, Steve Pickett, CBS 11.
Now, do you understand what you just saw right now? This is a true report. A true report. The police department got a call that teenagers, boys, little boys, was drinking in a party. They went to that party, and when the police officer showed up, he pulls out a rifle. He pulls out the rifle and fires on a moving car. Just think about that. This is according to their own report, because initially he lied. He said that the car was backing towards him. And then they checked his body camera, because they do force them to wear body cameras. They checked his body camera and they saw that the car was just pulling away. He took a rifle and fired on the car. Now, let me ask you, what will a police officer responding to a call that he got that teenagers was drinking, why will he respond to with a rifle? Even if he's in Iraq or something, even if he's in a war zone, do you respond and fire on a car that is driving away from you and then lie that the car was backing towards him? This is according to their own report. And then they put him on a pay leave. So they put him on a pay leave after he just murdered a 15-year-old boy. They put him on a pay leave while he's still being paid, while they quote unquote investigate him. I told you this is a spiritual thing. This is a spiritual issue. Did you remember the other one in Florida? Did you remember the one where the Hebrew Israelite was on the ground with his hands up? He was on the ground with his hands up, and he was still shot by the police officer. And then he asked the police officer, "Why did you shoot me? Why did you shoot me?" The police officer says, "I don't know." That was his answer. I don't know why I shot you. This man was already on the ground. He was on the ground. He has his hands up. And the police officer still fired. And he was shot. Then he asked the police officer, why did you shoot me? The officer said, I don't know. You see, you have to understand what's going on here. This is a spiritual issue. This is a spiritual issue. This is not a physical issue. This will continue to happen. The problem is that the so-called African Americans are foolish. They are foolish. They are foolish. They are trying to solve this problem the wrong way. Why do I say that so-called African Americans? I call them so-called African Americans because that's what they are. Because 80 years ago, go and study the history, your history in America. 80 years ago, you were not called African American. You were not called African Americans. That was the term, the nonsense term that started in the 60s. African Americans. 60s, 70s. That's when they began to call you that. And you proudly wear the label African Americans. The so-called African Americans are foolish. Absolute foolish. That is what the book says. That is what the Bible says. That is what your God said in Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 22. You don't understand what is happening, and you don't want to know, because you realize that if you accept the truth of who you are, then you're going to have to make some changes in your life, and you don't want to do that. You want to continue living the way you are living. You want to reserve the right to live however you want. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. That's how you guys are in the situation that you are in today. Because you want to live however you want, and you completely shut your mind away from knowledge. You completely you reject your identity. You want to be American. You reject your identity. It doesn't matter how much you protest. It doesn't matter how much you tweet. It doesn't matter how much you pray, how much you vote, how much you hold hands with your enemies. It doesn't matter how much you try to integrate. It doesn't matter how much you send your kids to your enemies, to the Gentiles, to the heathen, to educate your children. It doesn't matter how much you do all of this. They will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. You can marry their women all you want. You can integrate with them all you want. You can do all these things all you want. They will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. They will continue to oppress you. Why? Because you are the descendant of the ancient Israelite that you read about in this book. This is the book. This is where you're going to find your history. If you are a so-called African American in America, or if you're an Igbo person, if you're from the Igbo tribe, this is your book. This is where you're going to find your history. So you can claim to be a Christian all you want. You can claim to be an American all you want. You can claim to be a Nigerian all you want. If you can claim to be all this nonsense, you're deceiving yourself. You're deceiving yourself. You're selling your heritage because you don't want to repent. You don't want to go back and keep the laws and the commandments in this book. That is how you get to be in America where you are today. Because your ancestors refused to keep the laws and the commandments in this book. If you are a so-called African American, you are one of the descendants of the ancient Israelites you read in the Bible. You're not going to hear this from your so-called churches. You're not going to hear this from there. If you are an African American, you are one of the descendants of the ancient Israelites. That's how you got to America. Your ancestors was kicked out of Jerusalem. After your ancestors came out of Egypt, they made a covenant with their God. And that covenant, part of that covenant is that they have to keep the laws and the commandments in this book. This is not a Christian book. This book, Holy Bible, the one that you probably have that you haven't read in a while, Holy Bible is not a Christian book. Holy Bible is your book. It's not a Christian book. It's not a religious book. Your ancestors made a covenant with the Most High after they came out of Egypt. Part of the covenant is that they have to keep the laws and the commandments in this book. And as long as they keep the laws and the commandments, they follow the laws and the commandments in this book and teach the other nations, they will be allowed to stay in their land in Jerusalem. But your ancestors became wicked, like most of you are today. Your ancestors became wicked and refused to keep the laws and the commandments in this book and began to worship idols. That's how they got to be kicked out of their land. They were kicked out of their land. If you read Luke chapter 21, you will see that as of the time of Christ, the so-called Hebrew people, the so-called African Americans, the Hebrew people, the Igbo people, they were living in Jerusalem. If you read Matthew 24, Luke 21, but pay attention in the whole verse in Luke chapter 21. If you read Luke chapter 21, you see how Christ described how your ancestors was going to be kicked out of Jerusalem. That prophecy was fulfilled in 70 AD. In 70 AD, when the Romans came into Jerusalem and destroyed the temple and kicked the Israelites out, and they migrated towards Africa. They migrate. Read Luke 21 and you see the prophecy. And then you go and do your research. Go and do a research and see what happened in 70 AD. According to the secular history, what happened in 70 AD? The Romans, the European people, the same people who are oppressing you today in America, the ancestors of those who are oppressing you in America was the same people that kicked you out of your land. And your ancestors migrated towards Africa. Some went towards Southern Africa, towards Zimbabwe. Some went towards Western Africa, where the area that is known today as Nigeria, the Igbo tribe, that's where your ancestors was taken to America from the Igbo tribe.
They said that there. Now, if most of us do a DNA test right now, we'll trace our lineage back to West Africa. This is a fact. I'm from the Igbo tribe, Nigeria. Over 75% of my blood.
So this is the brief history of how you got to America. And then when your ancestors was in Africa, they continue to worship idols there. And your creator, your God, sent the same European people, the British people, came down there and took your ancestors as slaves. Some of them as slaves, and took them to America. And that's how you got to America. And you still refuse to follow the laws and the commandments in this book. This is foolishness to you. This doesn't mean anything to you. And until you go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book, your enemies will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. They will continue to rape your women. Look at the prison system. Look at the prison system and you see most of America has the biggest prison system in the world. The Chinese nation, the nation of China, has more people in population. Has more people, but they have fewer people in prison. The Americans have more than 2 million people in jail, in prison. More than 2 million people in prison. And most of them are the so-called African Americans. You don't understand, and you don't want to understand what is going on, because you realize that if you accept your identity of who you are, you will have to start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. That is the only way you're going to be saved. You have to read Deuteronomy chapter 28. If you want to see what's going on, if you want to see why they are killing you, if you want to see why they are poisoning you, like the story that came out in Michigan, how the government was poisoning the people. They knew that the public water system was contaminated, and yet they kept it secret, and the people was drinking water and they were dying. Who was the people? The so-called African Americans. Did you remember the Black Wall Street? Did you remember the story of the Black Wall Street in Oklahoma? How the American military was dropping bomb in the soil of America, destroying the whole businesses and the buildings of the so-called African American. Go and research the history of the Black Wall Street. Most of you don't even know your history, and they won't teach you this in church. They won't teach you this in the school system. Your only solution is to go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. To start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book, this is where you're going to find your history. This is, you are going through the courses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. You are going through the courses of Deuteronomy chapter 28, and your life means nothing in America. Your life is worthless. If you are an African American, you can shave your beard all you want. You can integrate all you want. You can be feminine all you want. You can marry their women all you want. You can go to their school all you want. You can vote, pray. You are wasting your time. You are going through the courses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. They will continue to kill you. They will continue to jail you. They will continue. You will continue to suffer and go through these things because you are going through the courses of Deuteronomy 28. And the only solution is to go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. Read Deuteronomy chapter 30. Deuteronomy chapter 30 is where you're going to find the solution. Deuteronomy chapter 30. You must go back and start keeping the laws and commandments in this book. But unfortunately, you're not going to do that. You're going to think that this guy who is screaming, this guy is crazy. That's what you're going to think. But you are foolish. That's how your God describes you in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 22. The so-called African Americans, the so-called Hebrew people, you people are foolish because you refuse to follow the right solution. Rather than going back to your God, instead of going back to your God, instead of keeping his laws and his commandments, you refuse to do that. You continue to embrace Christianity and you refuse to go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments. You continue to trying to integrate with your enemies. You continue trying to march and trying to get to free yourself. You continue trying to educate your children in their school system. You continue trying to do all of these things, trying to vote, thinking that that's how you're going to get your freedom. You're wasting your time. It's not going to happen. This will continue to happen. Pretty soon, I'm going to be doing another video of another person that get killed. It's a sad situation. I don't want to do that, but I will continue to warn you. But you will refuse to accept because you love pleasure more than your God. You embrace Christianity, which is a pagan religion, and you love pleasure. That's why you embrace Christianity, so that you can do whatever you want. You need to wake up and realize what is happening. You need to go back and start keeping the laws and commandments in this book. That is the only way you're going to be saved. When you look at an American, when you look at their response, look at the response of the police department. Somebody murders a 15-year-old boy. He gets suspended, but he's still getting paid. So he is actually on vacation. How can somebody take a rifle and murder a 15-year-old boy? Murder a 15-year-old boy in cold blood. He gets allowed to go home and rest while he's getting paid. So he's actually not working. He's actually better off now that he killed somebody. So he's getting paid without working. He's just sitting at home. Do you think he loves to go to work and get paid? He would rather stay at home and get paid. That's exactly what they do to these people when they murder your people. Did you remember the story of Ashton in Baton Rouge? Did you remember the other story? The Hebrew Israelite that was shot in cold blood. Did you remember that story? Did you remember that? The killers of this man, these two police officers you see here was recently acquitted. They were recently acquitted.
CBS News has confirmed that the Justice Department will close the investigation into the police shooting death of Alton Sterling and not bring charges against the officers. Thousands protested after the 2016 death in Baton Rouge. Sterling died after he was shot multiple times during a confrontation with police outside a convenience store. This case is the first time that Attorney General Jeff Sessions' department has declined publicly to prosecute officers being investigated.
So you have to understand that what's going on is a spiritual issue. This will continue to happen. If you are an African American, a so-called African American, and you live in America, your life means nothing. Your life, you are worthless in America. When you look at the Americans, the white Americans, you have to understand something. When you look at them, they have no idea what they're doing. These people was chosen to take you as slaves and oppress you. They are your enemies. Whether you accept that or not, that's your problem. It is what it is. They are your enemies. That's how the Bible described them. Read Deuteronomy chapter 28. Read Deuteronomy chapter 28 to understand what I'm talking about. Deuteronomy chapter 28, Deuteronomy chapter 30, and Luke chapter 21. Deuteronomy chapter 30 is where you're going to find the solution. Deuteronomy chapter 30. That is where you're going to find solution to this problem. You must go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. That is the only solution. When you look at the white people, when you look at them, they have no idea what they're doing. This is a spiritual issue. It's kind of like Pharaoh. When Pharaoh was refusing to let the Israelites go. Did you remember the story in Exodus chapter 1? When Pharaoh was refusing to let the Israelites go. Pharaoh had no idea what he was doing. God is the one that hardened his heart. So God was manipulating Pharaoh to refuse to let the Israelite go. So Pharaoh had, if you went up to Pharaoh at that time and said, hey, let these people go, let them go so that you can stop, suffering, Pharaoh would not have listened to you. So that is exactly the same thing that is happening today. The white people who are doing these things to you have no idea what they are doing. These are same people that put in the welfare system that destroyed your family. The welfare system around 1969. Part of the requirement for the women to collect welfare in America is that they don't have to have a man at home. So that helped destroy the so-called black family. Go study about that welfare, how the welfare system was instituted and used to destroy the so-called black family. Go and study the history of Black Wall Street. Go and study these things and then go back and read Deuteronomy chapter 28. That's how you're going to see why this is happening. This is a spiritual issue and it will continue to happen. If you're an African American, a so-called African American, and you live in America, your life means nothing. Your life is worthless. Your life is worthless. You are going to be killed at any time. You are going through the courses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. You must go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. That is the only solution. This is where you're going to find your history. In this book, in the scriptures, is where you'll find your history. In Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4, it says that you will discontinue from your heritage. Meaning that you will forget who you are. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4 said that you will discontinue from your heritage. What about those in Israel? What about those? Those are imposters. They are liars. They are not the true Jews. They are not the real Jews. Read Revelation chapter 2 verse 9. Revelation chapter 2 verse 9. Revelation chapter 3 verse 9 also. Read Revelation chapter 2 verse 9. Revelation chapter 3 verse 9. Read Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy chapter 32. You will see it. These people, the people in that land, they are not the true Hebrew people. And they will admit it. They claim to be Jewish, but they don't claim to be Hebrews. They understand. Most of them don't claim to be Hebrews. They don't even know what a Hebrew is. You are a true Hebrew if you are a so-called African American, and your only solution is to go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. If you read Luke chapter 21, you will see how your ancestors was kicked out of their land in Jerusalem. And Christ says in Luke chapter 21 verse 24 that when your ancestors get kicked out, that the Gentiles will dwell in that land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. The people in that land right now in Jerusalem, they are the Gentiles. You are in captivity. You are scattered everywhere. You're scattered in Jamaica, in Haiti, in everywhere, in the four corners of the earth. You were scattered and you are in captivity. That is why go on the street of America and see the misery, the suffering that the so-called African Americans are going through. Go into the prison system and you see. I mean, look at it's out there. It's a fact what you're going through. It's a spiritual issue, but the problem is that most of you refuse to accept the truth, because you realize that if you accept the truth, you will eventually, if you accept the truth, you will actually have to start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. So you decide to lie to yourself. You continue to lie to yourself and deceive yourself and claim to be a Christian, and you claim to be an American. You're deceiving yourself. You are not an American. You are a Hebrew Israelite. You can claim to be an American all you want. Your life is nothing in America. You are a slave in America. Nothing has changed, because the European Americans, the white Americans, are the descendant of the British people. The British people are the descendant of the Roman people. These are the descendants of the same people that came and kicked your people out of that land in 70 AD. Nothing has changed. This is a spiritual issue. They have no idea what they are doing. When is the last time you saw a Mexican American police officer shoot a black man? When is the last time you saw a white woman police officer shoot a so-called African American? Go and do your research and see. You will notice that most of the time, when you hear that a so-called African American has been shot by the police, it's mostly between a white police officer shooting a black man. Go and do the research and you will see it. It's not a coincidence. When is the last time a police officer who is a black man, or whatever you want to call him, shot an African American? When is the last time? most of the time when you hear that a so-called African American has been killed by a white police officer, go and do your research. You will see that most of the time, the person that pulled the trigger is a white man. It's not a coincidence. They have no idea what they're doing. This is a spiritual issue, and it's happening because you're going through the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. The only solution is for you to go back and start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. That is the only solution. Read Deuteronomy chapter 28. That's where you go. That is where you're going to see the causes that you're going through. The causes of Deuteronomy chapter 28. You're going through a cause. That is why these things are happening to you. That is why you can work hard all you want, do all these things. You never get anywhere because you're going through the causes of Deuteronomy chapter 28. Read it and you will see it yourself. Read Luke chapter 21. You will see how your ancestors was kicked out of Jerusalem. Read Deuteronomy chapter 30. That is where you're going to see the solution to this problem. Until then, they will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. You have to wake up and realize what is happening. You must start keeping God's law and commandment. Where do you find his laws? Where do you find his laws? In the book of Leviticus, in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers, in the book of Exodus. You must go back and start keeping those laws. Flip open that book and read the book of Leviticus, the book of Numbers, the book of Exodus. Start from the book of Exodus so that you can see your history in Egypt. The same thing that is happening to the so-called African Americans in America today is the same thing that happened in Egypt. If you read Exodus chapter 1, Exodus chapter 2, you will see how the Egyptians was killing primarily the Hebrew men. The Hebrew men, the Egyptians was specifically targeting the Hebrew men and killing them. It's the same thing happening in America today. It's exactly the same thing. Read Exodus chapter 1 and you will see it. That's exactly the same thing. They are specifically targeting the so-called African American male. Go into the prison system. Most of the people there are the so-called African American males. When they instituted the so-called Welfare Act, it was primarily designed to destroy the so-called African American family by offering women money to kick out their men, their husband. And that's how the so-called Africa, that's part of, go do your research and you see these things. The reason why they are targeting the males, they are killing mostly the males in America today. The reason why they're doing that is it's the same thing that happened in Egypt. That's why it says that the very last verse of Deuteronomy chapter 28, it says that I will send you into Egypt again in ships. If you are a so-called African American, you are not an American. You are not an American. You are not a Christian. You are a Hebrew Israelite. You are a Hebrew Israelite. This is where you are going to find your history. This is where you will find your history. This is not a Christian book. You must start studying this book. You must keep all the laws and the commandments in this book. Stop following Christianity because Christianity is a pagan, hidden religion. You must start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. This is where you will find your heritage, your history. You must read and observe what you do. That's why Paul said in Romans chapter 2 verse 13 that not the hearers of the law are just, but the doers of the law will be justified. If you read Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 to verse 19, Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 to verse 19, Matthew chapter 23 verse 1 to 3. Matthew chapter 7 verse 21 to verse 23. If you read these places, in Revelation chapter 22 verse 14, you read all these places, you see that Christ was saying that we must keep all the laws and the commandment of God. We must keep all the laws and the commandment of God. So this is not a Christian book. The Christianity teaches that we don't have to keep the law. You are under grace. You are saved by grace. Nonsense. This Bible, Christ teaches you that you must keep all the laws and the commandment of God. Paul said in Romans 2:13 that not the hearers of the law are just, but the doers of the law will be justified on the judgment day. You must start keeping the laws and the commandment in this book. You must go back and read Deuteronomy chapter 28 in order to understand what's going on. And then you have to read Deuteronomy chapter 30 in order to understand the solution. Read Luke chapter 21 to understand how your ancestor was kicked out of Jerusalem. The people over there right now are imposters and they are going to be destroyed. You must start keeping the laws and the commandment in this book. You also need to read Revelation chapter 18. Revelation chapter 18 talks about the destruction of America. America will be destroyed. I know that sounds crazy. That will sound crazy to you. America will be burned down with fire. America will be destroyed with a nuclear bomb. America will be destroyed. Read Revelation chapter 18. You will see the prophecy against America. You have to read it in order to understand it. In Revelation chapter 18 verse 4, it says, come out of her, my people. Come out of her, lest you partake in her sin and be destroyed with her. America will be destroyed. And in verse 4, it says, come out of her, my people. You will also see the same prophecy in Isaiah chapter 47. Isaiah chapter 47 is a prophecy against America. In chapter 48, Isaiah chapter 48, your God tells you to deliver yourself. Isaiah chapter 48 verse 20, it says, deliver thyself from the daughter of Babylon. Deliver thyself. Today, some of your leaders, some of your so-called Hebrew Israelite leaders are teaching that you don't have to get out of America. You must get out of America. Read Revelation chapter 18. Read Isaiah chapter 47 and chapter 48. If you dwell in America, if you live in America, you must get the hell out, because America will be destroyed any moment from now, and America will be destroyed with a nuclear bomb. You must get out. Don't go to Europe. Don't go to Europe. Most countries in Europe are also going to be destroyed with a nuclear weapon. Don't go to Europe. You can go to Africa. You can go and wait, because you're waiting for Christ to come back and put you back in your land in Jerusalem. Don't go to Europe. Most countries in Europe are going to be destroyed. America will be destroyed with a nuclear weapon. America will be destroyed any moment from now. This is a warning to you. But overall, most importantly, you must go back and start keeping the laws and commandments in this book. Until then, they will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. They will continue to rape your women, and you will continue to go through these things. You can continue to march all you want. You can continue to pray all you want. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 9 says that he that turns their ear from hearing the law, their prayer is an abomination to heaven. Whoever turns their ear and say that they don't have to keep the law, they don't want to hear the law, they want to eat shrimp, break the Sabbath, do whatever they want, whoever chooses to do that, their prayer is an abomination to heaven. So if you continue to reject the laws and the commandment of your God, if you continue to refuse to keep the laws and the commandment of your God, you can pray all you want. You're wasting your time. You must start keeping the laws and the commandments in this book. That is the only way you're going to be saved. Until then, they will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. Your life means nothing in America. You must start keeping the Sabbath of God, God's Sabbath. And the Sabbath is not on Saturday. It's not on Sunday. In Exodus chapter 31, your God said that the Sabbath is a sign that identifies those that belongs to him. His Sabbath is a sign that identifies those that belongs to him. You must start keeping his Sabbath. His Sabbath is not on Sunday. It's not on Saturday. They've lied to you about that. His Sabbath is regulated by the moon. His Sabbath is regulated by the moon. Look below this channel and you will see a video titled Lunar Sabbath Perfectly Explained. Lunar Sabbath Perfectly Explained, and you will learn more about the true biblical Sabbath of your God that is regulated by the moon. In the scriptures, they did not use a man-made calendar to keep the Sabbath. They used the calendar, the moon, that your creator created according to Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 and Psalm 104 verse 19 and many other places in the scriptures. You must start keeping the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the most important commandment in the scriptures. You must start keeping the Sabbath, and you must start keeping the laws and the commandments you read in the book of Exodus, in the book of Leviticus, in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers. You must start keeping those laws. That is your only solution. Until then, they will continue to kill you. They will continue to murder you. Your life means nothing in America. Your life is worthless in America. You have to wake up and realize what is happening and go back and start keeping the laws and the commandment of your God. That is the only way you're going to be saved. That is the only solution.